Welcome to White Owl Reports. I'm Michael Edward. Today, a little bit of a delayed start for those of you listening live. We had to get some links and such done, and it's just one of those weekends. It makes it more fun. But because of that, we're going to extend the broadcast. Normally, we're 10 a.m. till 11 Eastern Time. We're going to run till 11:30 Eastern Time today, so you'll get more than an hour of listening to some unbelievable historical facts from Paul Schaffranke, who's my guest again. And this is part 12 already of the Illinois Caves series. Just amazing, absolutely amazing stuff. And just speaking with Paul right before I came on live here, I guess we're all going to get blown away today. I want to remind everyone that what we're speaking of on the radio, when it comes to pictures, some of them are referenced at illinoiscaves.com, but some of them today are not even on that site yet. These are new pictures of artifacts that came out of the Illinois tomb of Alexander the Great. It's not lost in my book, but I'm sure everybody can debate that with me, but good luck trying to debate that with Paul Schaffranke, my guest today. So here we go, Paul. You're on, and we got a little late start, but let's hit it. Let's really open some eyes.
Okay.
I was reading... I gave you 15 minutes extra. I mean, come on.
I know. And I was just reading a comment of my the Etruscan Volume 1 video that Harry and I made.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody made a comment. This is the Numerius tablet that I deciphered at the very end of the video that comes out of the Illinois tomb.
Mm-hmm.
An interesting comment was made. How did the guy know it was 23 B.C.?
So how did you know?
Well, because it was a prophet, and he knew that Christ was going to be born 23 years later. And don't you know, in America, we do translate things. We date things AD and BC if it comes from America.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, it's just. But obviously, the individual did not watch the whole video because I go on explaining. I do the whole thing, it's read as the calends of November since the founding of Rome, which was a dating system they used, and then it was translated to 23 B.C. Mm-hmm. But obviously they didn't watch the whole video to see what kind of dating process was used on the artifact.
Well, sadly, most of them don't, Paul. So don't feel like they were picking on you. A lot of people don't have time to get through an hour or longer on a video, and they want to skim through and get the highlights, of which I'm guilty of doing the same thing. So,
right.
But it really is a video worth taking the time to watch and absorb. You guys did that when 1998, 95?
Oh, that one No, that was down in 95, 96.
Oh, wow. And I mean, it's just as important and educational, if we're going to use that term. To me, it's educational.
Yeah.
But it's just as much today as it was when you guys made it. And actually, I think even more so because, more things have been brought out into the open all those years. It's been a long time since you and Harry started on all this. So I'm just glad we're reviving it again, helping to be a part of that, because I think now it's more important than ever.
And I'd like to start with the artifacts. We have a couple on our site, and there's some pictures I'd like to compare it with. And what it does for me is that these artifacts are so diverse in so many things, not only the language, the details of some of these characters and portraits are so numerous that anybody prior to the computer age, it was really a very small, tiny number of people in this world that would have known the details that these artifacts describe. A lot easier now. You can go on the internet. There's a lot of historical experts. There's a lot of modding going on, which I do also on some of the more modern video games. I've helped mod modes for Rome Total War, which was a very popular computer PC game that came out in '05. We've done some historical accurate mods. And you can actually see now pretty much what different military units actually looked like 2,000 years ago. And we try to mod them as accurately from descriptions from ancient history and wall reliefs as we can, and then we bring these characters alive when they fight and do battle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's one that I want to show that came out of the Illinois cave, and it is the link found on our Illinois cave site. If you would show the warrior.
Okay, let me explain to people how to get to there who are listening. And again, with the video when it comes out, this will be shown on the video,
right,
so you don't have to go find the links. Here's how you get to it. If you go to IllinoisCaves.com, and then you go into the artifacts, and then there's a section there called Virginia Horrigan Gallery Exclusive. In there, you want to go to Warriors, and then we've got Warrior 3 and 4 pictures in there. So that's just for those who want to try to follow right now. Again, in the video, this will already be showing up on your screen as Paul begins to speak about this. So, okay, what's with these warrior pictures? What's that showing you?
Let's look at warrior number 3. And there's 2 pictures with warrior number 3. It shows the entire one to the left, and then a little more enhanced version of the chest area and the head on the one to the right, but it's the same artifact.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what really got me about this was the shield that this warrior was holding. And it is a heart-shaped shield.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Yeah,
and it has an interesting heart-shaped shield. You can see that the individual has a beard. He has a headdress which looks more Middle Eastern, Babylonian, or Persian.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some other things that are very interesting about him as the armor he's wearing. Well, I was able to identify, because I knew a lot about ancient infantry, which now with the computer age you can look it up and you can see pictures, but like 30 years ago, very few people actually knew what these characters looked like unless you studied ancient history or were into archaeology. You would only be privy to that information. So like I'm saying, with all these Illinois artifacts, there is so much information and so many details that somebody prior to 1982, if there was such thing as somebody faking these artifacts, not only would this individual have to know Egyptian hieroglyphs in ancient languages or group of individuals, they would have also had to know exactly what somebody wore 2,000 years ago as a uniform and what kind of hybrids were about. I mean, every little intricate detail, which is absolutely impossible. So this is another thing. This is one that also shows the authenticity. Now, you look at this warrior with this heart-shaped shield, and what it is, it's known as a Persian Takabara soldier. These were an Iranian soldiers from Iran. They served in the Persian Achaemenid dynasty, and they also served under Alexander the Great and with his successors. Now, I'm going to show you another picture here that I sent, which is when we modded the Roma Surrectum, one of the Rome Total War mods. We actually, this is what the infantry unit in our mod looks like. And if you would go to the picture, okay, Takabara 2. You have that picture?
Yeah, I have it in front of me. Again, this will be on the video when it comes out. So Takabara 2.
Yes, and it shows Parthia. And here's a whole line, a whole corps of these Takabara soldiers ready to throw their javelins. And you see the heart-shaped shield.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is how we read it, as that they had a heart-shaped shield like that, which is different from the regular square shields. and rectangular shields that other type of soldiers had. But one thing I found very interesting, these soldiers that we modded here come from the description of the ancient Persians. They wear the cloth tiara, and they have this nice Persian design on them also.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we go back to our artifact, there is something slightly different. And probably the author or whoever designed the stone is showing what the Takabara soldier at that time really looked like. And as you look at the shield, it has that heart-shaped design, but actually at the top of the shield, it goes straight across. You notice that?
Yes.
And where we modded it, we had it cut like the heart shape. We actually had it cut like that. Well, it's very possible that we misread the ancient history and the interpretation and actually cut the thing perfectly like a heart shape, but it may not have been like that. The top may have been flat like on that stone. So this could be a mistake as we interpreted wrong, and this Illinois artifact is actually correcting us.
Wow.
And now another thing that we look at here is we look at his uniform on the artifact.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's Persian, however, he's wearing the heart. He has a heart-shaped shield that the Takabara had. However, he looks like he has better armor, better leather armor. He has something on his shoulders. He has the belt. And then as going down to the waist, he has kind of this pleated leather armor that the Greco-Romans had later on, which tells me that this mercenary soldier here served in the Hellenistic armies later on, possibly with the Seleucids or even later on, you know, as an ally of Rome. But because of the Greek and Roman influence, they were able to wear better armor. And he's also wearing a dagger, which is a last resort usually. This comes mainly from the Greeks as a last resort when they got throwing their spears and their javelins. If they had to go into hand-to-hand combat as a last resort, they'd have to use a small dagger. And this was classic amongst the Macedonian phalangists. They really didn't have swords. They used their long pikes to fight. But then when they were at a disadvantage in hand-to-hand combat against better infantry, all they had was a small dagger. So when the Roman legionnaires got close to them and were able to get through their pikes, the phalangists had absolutely no chance against the Roman gladiators. But this is one thing this artifact here shows is it shows the soldier. He's better armored, but he has that heart-shaped shield, which shows that he's a Persian Takabara. So this basically shows a Persian soldier from the Greco-Roman times later on. And there's also another picture from a book showing what a Takabara show. The regular Takabara picture shows them. They also wielded an axe when they charged at you. They had the heart-shaped shield, and they wielded an axe. So it's this is another artist's conception. And the Takabara, the other one with all of them in line, is something that we modded in the Rome Total War game. So this is what you see when you play the game, and you actually see them move in motion and throw and come charging at you. So. But it's interesting that this Illinois artifact here shows this type of soldier, you know, with better armor and from the Middle East. So somebody had to have known that this type of soldier existed in order to carve him in there.
Yeah, and I'm looking at Warrior 4 picture, which is the one where he's down kneeling somewhat.
Yes, yes.
And the shield is unmistakably the same. You know, the helmet, the beard, the armor. The dagger looks a little bit bigger, but you still see where he's got the shielding on him, the belt buckle. The first picture is a little bit more detailed with like 3 buttons to hold on his chest armor, but you still see the armor on the shoulders. And something I'm noticing, what I've seen in a lot of the Illinois cave artifacts is that ring that's on their biceps area. It's not a ring. It's obviously a special design, and I don't know if that was with Alexander the Great or not, but I've seen that on a lot of them. I just wanted to comment on that. That seems to be something that was important, probably signifying which army you were from.
I think a lot of this is possibly when you're wielding and throwing. I think this is some kind of a muscle brace, so you don't pull a muscle or a tendon while doing that. This is just my theory. This is probably why they had that. You see that with a lot of warriors. I don't know if it's some type
I'm trying to remember. I saw it with a woman as well. And
yes, that was more decor.
Like well, I thought that was tattooed at first, and I realized it was like wearing a bracelet.
Yes.
Especially with these newer pictures you and Harry have got that we're going to try to help you catch up and get up on IllinoisCaves.com. I mean, whoa, there's so much right now. Woo!
Yes. However, these Persian soldiers from Iran, they did wear jewelry and decoration on themselves. They were like that. They were known to do that, so this could also be an arm decoration bracelet. But on the fourth warrior where he's kneeling, you notice he has some armor on his legs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that comes from the Greeks. This is later also. They adopted that from the Greeks. So this Persian Takabara obviously fought at a later period, under the Hellenistic kings after Alexander the Great, or as an ally to Rome during the time of Julius Caesar, because Julius Caesar had allies from that part of it that actually helped him in Egypt when he was besieged at Alexandria.
Wow.
But the interesting thing I find is the shield. You have that heart-shaped shield, but really it's flat at the top. And we read it. We actually we cut the shield curved, so maybe this was a mistake we made. So when we mount the next generation, we're going to have to change the shield a little bit so it matches the artifact.
Well, it's a learning process. The more you see, the more that you're able to put together. And like I just mentioned, Harry has come up with some artifacts that neither one of you had pictures of that came out of the Illinois caves. So now we've got some new pictures and a little bit more detail for you to look at. And this is good, correcting and getting into proper detail to understand what was carved into these rocks that came from Illinois is really important, and it's historical. That's the main part. It's European history, and it was found in Illinois. All right, so you've got you sent me a couple pictures here. Which other one you want to go to? And again, these will be on the video where you can listen to Paul describe it as you see it.
Okay. Let's take a look at the throne one.
Okay, throne. All right, that's the lady sitting on the throne.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put the caption that Harry put on there.
No.
When he sent it to me. But let's put it this way. Yes, that's a very beautiful woman, obviously, sitting on the throne, and there's lots of details in there. So start explaining what this is all about, because this one is unbelievable detail. I mean, extreme.
Okay, and she's wearing a armband for decoration.
The same kind we just saw in a warrior.
Yes. But that just seems to have been pretty common. They like to wear decoration. Okay. Now you see the queen on the throne. You see some symbols. You see these symbols to the left of her. By the way, this is a brand new artifact that came out of when Harry took the trip up to see Scott Walter. I've only been privy to it for 2 weeks. But this one amazes me just as much as the Mark Anthony Stone last show we had. Okay, you see what looks like sun's rays over her head?
Yes.
Okay, it's solar rays. And at the top you see what's the circle cross?
Yeah, but that's. Can I make a comment? That's a little bit different than what we've seen in other ones. This is a circle cross, but then it has an X within the center part of it, which it looks like a spaceship to me.
Well, yeah, we don't.
Well, it's kind of unusual, especially with the lines that are going down there. Describe the rest of that. What do you think all that is?
Okay. And there's like 3 line rays coming out, and then there's a beetle.
Yeah.
Well, this is the dung beetle called the kefir in Egypt, which symbolizes immortality.
Oh.
Yes.
Ooh.
Symbolizes immortality. Then you have the sun's rays over the queen.
Mm-hmm.
Does not mean she's CEO of Shell Oil. It means that she's beloved. She's a queen of Egypt, and she's holding a staff. Now let's look at go to the bottom of her throne here, and you see some lettering.
Right.
The difficult part about a lot of these Illinois cave artifacts and the lettering is that they are abbreviated, and sometimes you have to figure out when an abbreviation begins and when an abbreviation ends, and whether it's just one letter standing by itself or it's a combination. And this is it's very, very difficult at times. However, I had an easier time with this one because pretty much we recognize who this individual is, concerning other artifacts from the tomb. Now, one very important thing when you look at her face, she is sitting on a throne and depicting herself as a goddess. And when these queens depict themselves as goddess, they have absolutely no problem depicting themselves nude. You look at her face, and it's just kind of a small, rounded face, not a long face. This is very characteristic. Kind of a small, rounded chin. But let's go to the letters at the bottom.
Okay.
You see the first letter?
I'm trying to make it out.
It looks like a C.
Yes, C, like possibly with I don't know if that's, okay. Yeah, I had to blow it up here. Yeah, it looks like somewhat of a rounded C, yeah.
Okay. The next letter is like an L, like our modern L, but it's flipped facing the other way.
Correct.
And then you have something that looks like a Y. Then you have a long letter that goes upwards, and then a square. Well, I looked at it, and reading the whole thing out and deciphering the ancient script, it doesn't read anything. So I come to the conclusion that it's like a lot of the other artifacts, it's abbreviated.
Okay.
Well, when you look at the first letters, okay, the reason that L is flipped the other way is because from other artifacts, that usually means that these two abbreviated letters go together, but the second letter, when it's flipped the other direction, it means that's where the abbreviation ends. So the letters after that are words of their own or abbreviations of their own. So we have a C and an L. Abbreviation, CL. Then you have a Y, which deciphers as like a U. Then that long letter after that is like it's deciphered as a P. And then the square after that is deciphered as a B. Okay, so we have CL, U, P, B. Well, I translated the CL as Cleopatra. U means, for the Greeks, for the ancient Greeks, the word U means son of, daughter of, or of. So it's Cleopatra, U, and then the P is an abbreviation of another name by itself, which I abbreviated as Ptolemy because that is the father's name. And then the B by itself, the square B, could signify Basileia, which is the Greek word for queen. So I interpret that as Cleopatra, Ptolemies, Ptolemais, Basilea, Cleopatra, daughter of Ptolemy, queen.
Wow. And I'll tell you what, that was all the legends and history about. No wonder Mark Antony just was overwhelmed with her. This is just a stone carving, my gosh, but it's
beautiful. It took me a while to figure that, but you can see the C and the backward L. You know, that's Cleopatra, Ptolemais, Basilea. And her title, queen, or could be daughter of Ptolemy, the king. I don't know exactly what it meant, but this is pretty much what I figured out.
Wow.
Now, the real kicker in this whole thing, well, not so much. I think there's going to be one coming up even after that, is the symbols to the left of her.
Oh, boy, I can't wait. Because I've been trying to figure them out.
One. What do you see at the very top, the first one? What does that look like?
Looks like a pyramid with squares in it.
Well, yes, pyramid with stones in it. Well, I interpret that as the pyramid with stones as, well, Queen of Egypt. This is a symbol, I believe, that this artist uses to signify Egypt.
That would make sense.
Now, the bottom one below that is you see a big square and you see 16 little squares in there.
Right.
I thought about that for a while. But then it said Queen of Egypt, 16 little squares. Well, it happens that Queen Cleopatra ruled as sole Queen of Egypt for 16 years.
Oh, so my gosh.
So I believe the artist here tried to indicate Egypt, 16 years. And then there's 4 other symbols below that.
Yeah, the next one looks like a fan or something.
A fan, a clamshell, or also, like the very top above her head, the rays of the sun.
Uh-huh.
Because below that, that's how I interpret it, as the rays of the sun coming from the sun. The bottom one is the moon, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's 2 others which I couldn't quite make out what the symbol means, but it represents a name or something. However, from the sun and the moon below the years that she reigned, I come to the conclusion that these last 4 symbols down are symbols that depict the name of her 4 children, because Cleopatra had a total of 4 children. Now, obviously, to this individual that's carving the rocks here, the sun is Alexander Helios, because Helios is represented by the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Below that is the moon, his sister Cleopatra Selene. And then there were 2 other siblings they had, was Ptolemy Caesarion and Ptolemy Philadelphus, which I believe those 2 last symbols here could represent one or the other. So I interpret that whole thing to the left as the pyramid saying Egypt, which she was queen of, reigned for 16 years and had 4 children, Alexander Helios, Cleopatra Selene, Ptolemy Philadelphus, and Ptolemy Caesarion. And on the bottom of that, it gives her name, Cleopatra, daughter of Ptolemy, queen.
Wow, that had me stumped on the 16 squares within a square. I figured...
Had me stumped too for a while, but then I started, then if it's Cleopatra, it's going to have to give some information about her. And yes, she did reign as sole ruler with her son Caesarion. Since Caesar left, there was 16 years.
She has almost a child face in this carving. I mean, this carving is so detailed. It's just, wow.
Very useful. Yes.
Mark Antony didn't have a chance.
No.
If he beheld that beautiful queen.
Well, we'll take another look at it. Now, there's another thing that kind of disturbs me, is that scepter she's holding in her hand that has the sharp point.
Right. I was going to ask you about that, because so many of them have the hook on the top that we've seen with older Egyptians. Yes. So
I don't know what this means. However, one thing that's very curious to me is when you read the book, The Mystery Cave of Many Faces, when Russell Burroughs entered that crypt where he said he saw the skeleton of this woman, he described that embedded in one of the rib bones was this golden metallic arrowhead-like thing. And just by his description and some artifacts found there, I pretty much come to the conclusion that that skeleton belonged to Queen Cleopatra.
I'm kind of looking at it a little bit different, and this is the wild thing that, you know, you look, 10 people can look at something and see 10 different things. Here's what I see. It's not that, it looks like a short spear that she's holding instead of a typical staff that would identify Egypt. But
I don't know what the author's trying to say, but however, Russell Burroughs saw a spear point embedded in the rib of that skeleton that Harry and I kind of concluded possibly was Cleopatra. Well, now, I don't know if this is saying that she may have committed suicide by sticking that thing in her, and the whole aspen snake story is just propaganda. I don't know.
I'm looking at it totally different. Totally. Here's what I see. The spear on it seems to be rounded at the head of the spear. Yeah. It looks more like a phalanx to me. It doesn't look like a spearhead. It sure doesn't look sharp. So here you've deciphered that you believe this is 16-year rule and reign of Queen Cleopatra, whose name is on the bottom, of Egypt, and then you have the 4 children of which you named. I'm looking at it that phalanx that she is holding, which is a very important symbol in Egypt.
Oh, the sarissa?
Is showing the children, to show the progeny.
Could be. I don't know.
No, that's just, and again, somebody else got to look at this and go and see something totally different. But I'm just amazed how detailed this particular picture is. I mean, it is super detailed.
Yes.
And
then the information on it is just...
Yeah. You know, when I looked the first time, and I just, want to give my opinion, I'm not a linguist or an apographer like you are. I mean, you just studied so much, but I saw that C in the backwards L, and right away I'm looking at this beautiful carving of this gorgeous woman, and I just jumped to the conclusion it was Cleopatra, or one of the Cleopatra daughters or something.
Well, just the symbology to the left, I mean, it just shows, this is how I described it, 16 years, Egypt, 4 children, but this is how I read it, but there's another picture I sent you, which Harry and I thought is her, and once again, she has a small rounded face. Here's the other picture of the woman on the artifact.
Okay. And we'll have this up on a video, so whoever is watching the video, you're seeing it now.
Now, like I said, this is where we believe it was also her because she has a small kind of rounded face, rounded chin. Now I want to show you another picture that I labeled as Queen. Little marble butt.
Right, that's the white marble picture.
Yes.
Okay, why did you feel this?
Now you see small chin, small rounded head.
And not very much of a pronounced nose, which I was going to mention that had this been Roman, or that other side of the Mediterranean, they you look at the carvings and even the bust of Mark Antony, and obviously that had the Roman nose.
Yeah, but this one either got eroded off and all that, just small, but it has a small, the rounded face and all this, and this was identified as Cleopatra too, but this one was found at that place called Tapuzeres. This comes from Kathleen Martinez's site. This was actually uncovered a couple of years ago in Egypt. This little marble head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm comparing it right now with the carving showing the side angle of her sitting on the throne.
Yeah.
You're right. The roundness,
Small
the
chin, roundness,
the smaller lips, and even the forehead. Yeah, it looks like it could darn well be the same.
Exactly. And that one was found at Taposiris, the place that I believe Cleopatra took all the bodies and hid them there from the mausoleum from the Romans, and then on a later date they were transported on board a ship and taken on there.
Mm. Wow.
There's also Alexander's head was found and all these, but this is from Kathleen Martinez's site, and she's searching for Cleopatra over believing that she's buried at her and Mark Antony are buried at Taposiris, but they haven't found them.
Well, maybe we should try to let her know that it looks like with artifacts that came out of Marion County, Illinois, that she might want to be looking somewhere that she hadn't thought of, because the artifacts aren't lying, are they, Paul?
No, not at all.
All right, Harry had sent me a list, and I want you to go over this with me because I'm going to probably really screw up on pronouncing some of the names, but I want you to describe. He had given me a list with the artifacts that came out of the tomb cave in Illinois that we're speaking about. Sadly, it was referred to in the past as Burroughs Cave, but it just because he pilfered it, he shouldn't have his name on it in my book, but that's all right. We'll just call it the tomb, the lost tomb of Alexander the Great. Now, out of all these artifacts that have come out of there, between what we have in pictures and glyphs and things that you've deciphered, let's go through the list and explain who each one is. And I want to bring this up simply because it proves not just the king who was there when these tombs were being built in southern Illinois, but the history before, as well as them coming there and such. And I want you to tie all this together because all these names of ancient people who were well known in history are all represented out of those things that came out of this tomb in southern Illinois. So let's start with Alexander the Great. Okay, that we know who he is. Then we go to Alexander Helios, and explain who he was.
Well, that is Cleopatra's son, and this is who we see as, on a lot of these artifacts, as being king of this North American kingdom, whatever you want to call it, that he was in charge of everything, and that he was responsible for depositing all the corpses of his relatives and bringing them over and taking them to this tomb.
He was king of Blissland, or Happy Land, as we discussed last
King of Happy Land, yes.
Okay, next one on the list, I'm doing this alphabetical as Harry gave it to me, Cleopatra Selene.
That is his sister, his twin sister, who was married to King Yuba of Mauritania. And King Yuba, we believe, is the one who supplied the ships to carry all the artifacts, all the important treasures, over to the Happy Land.
Cleopatra the Seventh.
Well, that's the queen that we've been looking at and talking about, the mother of Selene and Alexander Helios.
So she was the seventh. Why was it shown that way? She was seventh along the dynasty of the
seventh
Ptolemy.
Cleopatra from the Ptolemaic dynasty. Yeah,
okay.
They call her Cleopatra Philopatra. Modern historians label her as Cleopatra the Seventh.
Aha. Okay. Gaius Octavius.
Gaius Octavius is the famous who later on became Emperor Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. He's the one that defeated Mark Antony and Cleopatra. And his sister Octavia is the one that supposedly took in the children of Cleopatra and raised them. And then once they became adults, we just completely lost track of them, except for Cleopatra Selene, who married King Yuba. But as far as the two Alexander Helios and Ptolemy Philadelphus, we don't know. Caesarion, the 16-year-old son of Julius Caesar, with Cleopatra, he supposedly was murdered when Egypt fell by Octavius. So Octavius is the same one as Emperor Augustus later on.
Gotcha. Wow, I just love it. I get such a history lesson on these shows. I'm learning with the listeners, believe me. Hannibal Barca.
Hannibal Barca was Rome's worst nightmare. He was the famous Carthaginian general of the Second Punic War who came very close to annihilating the Roman Republic, but finally was defeated. He's the famous hero of Carthage during the Second Punic War. Want to watch a great movie about him? It's called Hannibal, Rome's Worst Nightmare. You can actually pick it up on YouTube and watch it in parts. It's pretty good.
Wow. And again, I want to remind everybody who's listening and watching this on YouTube or on Vimeo, I'm going through names of those who have already been identified in what came out of the Illinois tomb. All right, next one, a real easy one, Julius Caesar.
Yeah. Well, he's depicted in a lot of artifacts. He's depicted with a traditional Roman look. He's also depicted on marble with an Egyptian uraeus, showing that he was also pharaoh of Egypt. Of course, he was Cleopatra's husband by Egyptian tradition. So we do see that in a lot of the Illinois artifacts.
Okay, I don't know if this is pronounced right. I'm getting kind of confused with some of them, so correct me. King, and I believe it's King Yuba II, or is it Eub?
Yes.
Yuba, how do you pronounce that again? Because it wasn't
King
really
Yuba,
J, was it?
No, it's King Yuba with U. Okay. Yeah, King Yuba. He was the king of Mauritania, which is today Algeria and Morocco. He was the husband of Cleopatra Selene, Cleopatra's daughter, and he was the one that had the fleet or could have financed the fleet and would have been able to help Alexander Helios get all the treasure out of Egypt and bring it across here. Supposedly also as king of Mauritania, he would have had the knowledge of the ancient Carthaginians and Phoenicians, their maps and their charts, so navigating the Atlantic would not have been a big deal for him. So if anybody knew about North America at that time, it would have been King Yuba.
And we did speak last week, and I believe the week before, talking about how this new land, North America, Happy Land, had copper mines and such that some of them are still in somewhat production today in the same area in that southern part of Illinois. So it could have been King Yuba, without a doubt, who had fantastic trade route going down to Mississippi, and we talked about that, where we're seeing dolphins and whales and things that you'd see in the Caribbean that were depicted on some of these carvings. All right, here's one that I don't think we've spoken about. Croesus, king of Lydia.
Yes.
Okay, explain who that is.
King Croesus lived in the 6th century BC. He was a king of Lydia, which is now a portion of western Turkey, with the capital at Sardis. And what Croesus is so famous of is that he was extremely wealthy, and he donated a lot of wealth to the mainland Greece because he wanted favorable oracles. And what he's famous for is when the Persian Empire was expanding, it started expanding westwards into Anatolia, and it came in contact with Croesus in Lydia. Well, Croesus wanted to know, well, if he wanted to fight the Persians, would he win? And when he gave a lot of gifts to the Delphic Oracle, and it told him that if he crossed the river Halys, a kingdom would be lost. So he kind of took it as an interpretation that he would defeat the Persians. But instead, when he crossed the river, he was defeated himself, and he kind of misinterpreted the oracle that the kingdom dimension was his. Well, he finally was defeated. He was defeated by the Persians. It was by Cyrus the Great, one of Cyrus the Great's generals. He was defeated by him, but then after he was defeated, he became an advisor to Emperor Cyrus, the Persian King Cyrus the Great, for the rest of his life until Cyrus got killed in battle. So this is who the famous Croesus of Lydia was.
Okay, that's on apparently one of the artifacts.
He's on one of the
Illinois
artifacts too. Yes.
Okay, we haven't gone over that one, so that's why that was a big question for me. And you said from what date? When was this from in BC? Approximately
early 500, by 550 around that time. If all the dating is accurate.
So we're spanning at least 500 years before.
Oh, this is way before. This is a character over 500 years prior to this. This is just a historical character, but it would have been fun to read about. Yeah, around 550 BC. That's when he reigned around that time.
Wow. So it sounds like I'm only halfway through the list of the famous people that are depicted within these artifacts, but it sounds like, I'll jump to a big conclusion. We're looking at historical records that Alexander the Great, in my opinion, that he picked up along his conquering of the known world. And these are those he conquered. And his family is as well, and what was a Ptolemy family as well. So,
yeah,
okay.
But
next
one
is
something from ancient history, I know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the Library of Alexandria.
Yes.
Which I'm convinced is sitting in southern Illinois, but that's my opinion, and it's backed up by a lot of amazing artifacts. All right, next one's an easy one. Mark Antony, and you've already
we talked about a lot.
Explained many things about him. King Mithridates.
King Mithridates, the famous one. He was from a kingdom known as the Kingdom of Pontus, and that existed. That was in northern Turkey along the Black Sea. They were kind of a mixture of Persian and Greek. Semi-Hellenized. Mithridates was very famous because he launched a very bloody war against Rome. He tried to throw the Romans out of Asia Minor. The Romans had to send several generals against him, and it was finally Pompey, the great Pompey, who defeated him. And also, a son of Mithridates was defeated at the Battle of Zela by Julius Caesar. And it was after that battle where Caesar coined his famous phrase, Veni, Vidi, Vici, I came, I saw, I conquered. It was against the Pontic kingdom that he did that. And Mithridates was the main king of during the whole Pontic era. And he fought many bloody wars against the Romans, and the Romans finally defeated him. And he is depicted on one of the artifacts, too.
Wow. Okay, I believe you mentioned this one before, Ptolemy Philadelphus of Mauritania.
This is Ptolemy Philadelphus. Yes, Ptolemy Philadelphus is a brother of Alexander Helios and youngest son of Cleopatra. Now, there's also a Ptolemy of Mauritania. I don't think I've seen him I don't recall. I may have. Ptolemy of Mauritania was actually the son of Cleopatra, Selene, and King Yuba. And there's something very bizarre also about him. This is what I want to talk about also, which could be associated with the Illinois caves. During the reign of King Yuba, Mauritania amassed a lot of wealth and gold and all kinds of things. It was during the reign of Emperor Caligula, crazy Caligula, that he was just spending so much of the Roman treasury on parties and orgies that he basically bankrupted the entire empire with all his excessive spending. So in order to recoup what he spent, because he was supposed to finance an invasion of England, and all he ended up doing is visiting his army, and they were collecting seashells, and they never went to England, and he became very unpopular. However, one of the final acts of Caligula during his reign was that after he depleted the treasury, he tried to find a source of gold or riches to replenish it. And he heard that Mauritania had a lot of gold and riches. So what he did is he invited Ptolemy of Mauritania, who was the son of Yuba and Cleopatra Selene, in the 30s AD to Rome, had him murdered, and then had soldiers, just annex and take over Mauritania. But the strange thing is, when they were looking for the so-called treasures of Mauritania, there was nothing to be found. So Caligula had nothing to replenish the Roman treasury, and that was the main reason the Praetorian Guard assassinated him and then put Claudius on the throne. So this is another peculiar thing. There was nothing found in Mauritania when the Romans finally annexed it.
Kind of like nothing was really found in the tomb of Alexander.
So where did the gold and the treasure go?
Yeah, this seems to be a common theme, especially with interpreting some of these things from the Illinois Cave. It seems to be a real common theme.
Did it also finally end up in the Illinois Caves?
Yeah,
all this
could
gold,
be.
which Harry's going to talk about, a lot of this gold, possibly was the treasure of Mauritania, also, along with Cleopatra's, ended up over here, and Caligula could not get his hands on.
Well, I know that Harry is, like you said, he wants to talk about that. He'll be on the future shows here. He's collecting a lot of info and has quite a paper trail with all this gold once it was taken out of the Illinois Cave and such. So that's a future segment coming up. This seems to be a never-ending series, and we'll just go up to 200 whatever. It might be number 12 now, but just more and more, Paul, is just coming to light, literally coming to light in translating these things and these new pictures that Harry was able to obtain of what definitely came out of the Illinois Caves. So, all right, let's move on. We got a few more names here. Also, the Ptolemy dynasty, Soter the First.
Yes. There was a half-brother and one of Alexander's chief generals, and after Alexander passed away, he became the first pharaoh of the Ptolemaic dynasty of Egypt, and he ruled Egypt for quite a while, and it was through his dynasty that finally ended with Queen Cleopatra. And by the way, that recent Alexander the Great movie that was made in 2004 by Oliver Stone, the old man that is played by Anthony Hopkins is Ptolemy Soter, and he's telling the story through his point of view in that movie.
All right. Next one, again from the Ptolemy dynasty family, the 11th. Yeah.
Yes, Ptolemy Auletes is Cleopatra's father, famous Queen Cleopatra's father. He's known as Auletes because he played this flute he played instruments. He was very famous for playing instruments. He loved luxuries. He was a very good friend of Rome. He was overthrown by his brother a couple times and his daughter, one of his other daughters. And it was him who went to Rome and supposedly took a very young Cleopatra, she was 13 at that time, to Rome with him when he was exiled the first time. His daughter Berenike overthrew him and took over the throne. So him and Cleopatra went to Rome when she was very young, and Caesar was consul at that time. And he tried to convince Rome to help him out. And he stayed there for several months, and supposedly he couldn't. But legend says is when his 14-year-old daughter walked up to Caesar and all these Romans, she made the deal with them, and they gave him military support, overthrew his other daughter, beheaded them, and he sat on the throne for a few more years until Cleopatra turned 18 when she took over. But supposedly it was a 13-year-old Cleopatra that finally convinced the Romans that it would be in their best interest to restore her father back on the throne so that, they could have good trade relations.
I wouldn't doubt that.
So she kind of made a name for herself. So I think It was basically like when Caesar saw her when he went to Egypt. You know, at her age at 21, it was like, wow, they have met before. And he was impressed by her probably when she was 13 and 14 with her intellectual ability. And then she turned out to be this beautiful young woman, so he couldn't resist.
Yeah, Mark
Ptolemy is his father.
Mark Antony didn't have a chance. Just like I said
No, he
earlier,
didn't either.
You know, I'm looking at the face and the carving that we were talking about in the beginning here.
Yeah.
And my gosh, that's just the carving, and you can tell that is an absolute beautiful woman.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't have any doubt that at 13, 14 years old, she was in front of Caesar in the Roman Senate, and they probably were standing there with their mouths open.
Well, that's supposedly the legend goes like that. I mean, they really don't know. They knew that her father was in Rome, but he was a drunkard. He liked to play and party all the time, and it didn't seem like he could convince anybody. But if he had that good daughter with him, Cleopatra, she stood in front of him and convinced him, put him back on the throne. We're going to have a good business relationship with you guys. Obviously, it worked.
Yeah, something worked. Just her beauty alone could have done it. All right. Now we're getting into another one that I haven't discussed with you or Harry. Pyrrhus, king of the Molossians?
Yes, he's king of the Molossians, a tribe. What is today at northern Greece, Albania? It was a kingdom known as the Kingdom of Epirus. Pyrrhus was like a distant cousin of Alexander the Great from his mother. Well, he in a late, like around 279 BC, he invaded southern Italy because the city of Tarentum was being threatened by Rome. Rome was expanding southwards and trying to unite the entire Italian peninsula. So the Tarentines called Pyrrhus of Epirus from across the Adriatic for help. Well, he sent a big army into Italy, and he fought these bloody battles against the Romans. He won them, but he lost so many people. This is where we get the term Pyrrhic victory from him. And he was also the first one to bring elephants into Italy as war machine. He brought them into Italy, and this is the first time the Romans were able to encounter elephants. But he was extremely brave, extremely gutsy. He fought many battles. Then he was called for help in Sicily against the Carthaginians. And he helped the Greeks in Sicily fight the Carthaginians. He almost beat them there. And finally he was defeated by the Romans in southern Italy, so he decided he had enough of Italy. So he went back to Epirus, and then he ended up fighting Sparta. He almost took the city of Sparta, but it didn't quite work out for him. He just always got in trouble. You know, anytime there was a war or something, he had to be part of it. And what is so ironic was that he was so feared and so brave that he fought a lot of battles hand to hand, you know, in combat, that the way he died is he was in the city of Corinth, and as he was walking on one of the streets, you know, there was a street fight going on with an opposition. An old lady threw a tile and hit him on the head and knocked him out. And one of his enemies recognized it was Pyrrhus laying unconscious, so he stabbed him to death and cut his head off, and then said Pyrrhus is dead, you know, and everybody couldn't believe that this monster, the boogeyman, was finally slain. He was like the boogeyman of Greece at that time.
Wow.
And it's very ironic. That's how he died. You know, he got some old lady threw a tile and knocked him out, and then he died that way. Somebody finally had the guts to cut his head off while he was unconscious. It's quite a story reading about him. I wish they would make a movie about this character.
They just might. And again, to remind people, this Pyrrhus, who this king we're speaking about, this is again found in the Illinois tomb.
There is a tablet showing a portrait of him and a little description. That's also, it's like it's saying, it's a who's who in ancient history also.
Wow. And we got one more, Quintus Metellus.
Quintus Caecilius Metellus. He lived around, from our dating time, anywhere from like 128 BC to 63 BC. He was a Roman politician, and what he was famous for was that he fought in the war against the Jugurthine War in Numidia, which is what later King Yuba reigned of. Well, the Numidians rose up in revolt against the Romans, and they fought a brutal desert war. And the Romans were defeated several times, and then they had to bring the famous general Marius, and Quintus Metellus was one of the generals along with him, and they were able to finally defeat the Numidians. And he also fought in Spain against a rebel Roman leader named Sertorius. They fought a very brutal guerrilla war in the mountains of Spain against Rome, and he was one of the commanders that fought against this group in Spain. So this is another character, pretty famous character from that time period.
Well, my conclusion, we just went through 16 names of famous people in history. Yeah. The most important time of history that, we're taught now, all of them being depicted on tablets and on stone carvings and writings that came out of this particular tomb and cave in southern Illinois in Marion County, in what's located as the area nicknamed Little Egypt. It's amazing. It sounds to me like we've got so far an absolute representation of the Library of Alexandria, the famous library of all the historical facts, and we probably just barely touched the iceberg with what we know already. Just barely. Anyway, wow, we got to sit back. Paul, you've gotten into this so much more than me. I'm just a student learning from what you've already been able to decipher and learn. And
well, I'm just a student too.
Well, I realize that, but I'm a student of a student, and you've been at this since 95. I'm just overwhelmed.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what the carvings, the message given on the carvings and the representations, because a lot of it is abbreviated, the script is abbreviated, there's a lot of symbolism, and sometimes it just takes a lot of time. It's like some of it is like probably we'll never able, to get it, completely. This is why down the road more historians and more, people, they may be able to crack what I can't figure out. That's what I'm saying. This is extremely important.
Well, you've cracked a lot of it. I mean,
some of it.
Well, enough to give us a definite idea who's being depicted and some of the things that were said. While I'm thinking of it, I wrote it down. You were talking about the one king who had brought the elephants to Italy.
Yes, King Pyrrhus did.
Right. And we also have depictions in some of the stone carvings of the Illinois cave of elephants, which there were no elephants in North America at the time. So obviously this was historical record.
This was historical record, yes. And it's a strange thing that when we encountered this writing, the word elephant didn't exist in the Latin language in Italy. So they named it Luca. They called it the Lucanian ox, Luca. And that's the term that's used on the stones when referring to the elephants, because it's referring to the historical time of Pyrrhus, and that's what they were called, in Italy at that time. So this is how they used the word.
Wow. It makes me want to grab a shovel and just dig southern Illinois up. It's no coincidence, first of all, and when you think about trade routes and such, and the Mississippi River and all that, and the older maps that Harry had collected that depicted these northern routes into the Arctic Circle and such that were open certain times of the year, and these maps are like 1625, 1590s. Okay, that's 1600 years later than apparently when these tombs were built. Mm-hmm. So obviously, the rats were there; they existed. We've just got to start thinking outside the box that academia has really placed us into when it comes to true history and what has come out of this particular cave, this tomb with the different crypts, is breaking history wide open like we've never seen.
And what I figured out also is how they lived here. They didn't live here at all as they did in the old world with big giant cities and all that. What we figured out is with all these mound locations, all these people lived very close to rivers.
Mm-hmm.
They had walled, enclosed areas right around the rivers, probably had their farms and all this. They probably also moved to different places during the year. They kind of followed a migratory pattern, a lot like our Native American Indians did here. I think they kind of learned that way.
Mm-hmm.
They followed it. They just lived along the rivers, ate the food in the rivers and all this. Didn't venture into the forest because they're probably dangerous, but just lived along the river area and the coastal areas and then moved from location to location. That's why we probably don't see remnants of giant cities. If there were any little towns or cities, they were all made out of wood, and which wouldn't survive to this day anymore unless you dug down and you could actually see. You probably have to do some aerial archaeology if you wanted to find a city that they built in that area where they could have lived. Probably some aerial archaeology could determine where the posts were and everything because the wood wouldn't survive anymore. But I don't know if anybody has done that, but there's got to be cities, showing areas where they had their cities.
Well, it makes sense for them to build with wood because it was abundant, without a doubt.
It's abundant,
and, probably was a whole lot easier than trying to find quarries and cut stones.
No, I don't. I think also because of the weather here in this continent that it was just better to build that way. Now, I've heard stories about the Cahokia Mounds, what they found inside a monk's mound. And there was a Native American years ago, and he said that was not Native American what they found inside a monk's mound. So I don't know what happened, but this is a story I heard from somebody who was an old Native American that actually worked in when they excavated Monk's Mound, I don't know, maybe in the 40s or 50s. And he swears, he said, what they took out of there was not Native American, so I don't know. So maybe the Cahokia Mounds or something, there's some connection to this culture from Little Egypt.
Well, just why do we find out that there's more than mounds, that perhaps just as they did in Mexico, when the conquistadors came, the largest pyramid in Mexico, everybody thought was a mountain because it was completely covered with dirt, and a Catholic cathedral was placed on the top with a nice gold dome.
Yes,
but
and
it's sitting on top of the largest pyramid in Mexico.
Yeah.
Could be the same
the
here.
Bizarre thing, when Harry and I went at the Cahokia Museum near the mound, you see all these arrowheads, you see all the pottery, you see all these skulls and everything, and then it gives you a little note saying the only authentic artifact that was found here that we have in this museum is this little birdstone of Cahokia. So everything else, the pottery, all that was made just for our decoration, all forgeries.
Oh, wow! So there's a whole lot more authentic, without a doubt, that came out of Illinois Cave in Marion County.
So that whole museum, the whole museum is just with modern, replica. That's all it is, just for show. Only one little tiny artifact in there, they say, is real that was found. So what about the things that they uncovered from the mound? Where are they?
Yeah, that would be a nice inquiry. I don't think we'll ever find out. Just like, everybody's going to blow off everything about what they term Burroughs Cave, which is what the lost tomb of Alexander the Great. That's it. It's showing it. People just don't want to believe what they haven't been shown before. But how can you discount things that are carved in stone? And I was thinking, and we just got a couple minutes left. I was thinking...
I had to change my way of thinking for this, too, when I saw this. I had to change what I've been taught. Really, I had to unlearn a lot. I said I have to start from blank, okay? Taking into consideration maybe what I was taught was not true because, somebody told me that, whatever you read, a lot of people say, oh, scientists have proven. How do I know? I wasn't in the laboratory doing these experiments. I'm just a teacher or some textbook told me that they did that. A lot of people say, well, science has verified. Well, how do you know? Unless you yourself did the experiment and can prove it, it's just somebody telling you that that's how it is,
Yeah, the debate, is the world round or is it flat? And, even that was kind of a farce because the history books hadn't said that it was flat at the time. That
Never.
Modern history is saying that it was and all that.
Yeah. You just have to look at the curvature of the horizon. And even the Native Americans and everybody knew it was a circle. Everything was round, a ball or circle. This is
Well, and my one statement that I want to make is it's been said that anything that's come out of this southern Illinois cave that we're calling the Lost Tomb of Alexander the Great, that, it's all fraudulent. Russell Burroughs and others just made up these carvings. The tablets or the writing, it was all faked. The problem is it's, as you have proven already, just with a few of the tablets and some of the stone carvings, the writing on it is proving that it has lots to do with real history. So
a group of people would have to known so much and then gone through the bit of work of faking everything and then really getting nothing out of it. That wouldn't make sense.
No, it wouldn't. No, they'd have to be amazing fakes with history books that don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway, again, wow, just been super exciting. We got a little bit of a late start today, but we also got an extra 15 minutes to talk today. So, again, just elated and excited. I don't have words for all this. Like I said, I just wish I'd get up there with a steam shovel or something and just start digging around where you and Harry, and especially Harry, had figured out where the caves were, and just get this out in the open.
Oh,
it's frustrating.
They got to get the best archaeologists and scientists and actually examine this, hopefully protect it.
That's what we can only hope for. But we got to get the stigma away from it first, and that's the reason for these broadcasts. Again, Paul, thank you for the fantastic history lesson and beyond. It's just fantastic having you on. And we'll just catch this again next week with another episode of True Believe. All right, thanks again, Paul. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, well, this is part 12, and just remember, be who you were created to be. Join me next Sunday with Paul and Harry, IllinoisCaves.com on the White Owl Reports. Michael Edward, catch you then.
Informed, enlightened, alive and amplified. This is the Living Light Network.
Game that came out in 2005. We've done some historical accurate mods. And you can actually see now what different military units actually looked like 2,000 years ago. And we try to mod them as accurately from descriptions from ancient history and wall reliefs as we can. And then we bring these characters alive when they fight and do battle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's one that I want to show that came out of the Illinois cave. And it is the link found on our Illinois cave site. If you would show the warrior.
Okay, let me explain to people how to get to there who are listening. And again, with the video when it comes out, this will be shown on the video,
right,
so you don't have to go find the links. Here's how you get to it. If you go to IllinoisCaves.com, and then you go into the artifacts, and then there's a section there called Virginia Horrigan Gallery Exclusive. in there, you want to go to Warriors, and then we've got Warrior 3 and 4 pictures in there. So that's just for those who want to try to follow right now. Again, in the video, this will already be showing up on your screen as Paul begins to speak about this. So, okay, what's with these Warrior pictures? What's that showing you?
Let's look at Warrior number 3, and there's 2 pictures with Warrior number 3. It shows the entire one to the left, and then a little more enhanced version of the chest area and the head on the one to the right, but it's the same artifact.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what really got me about this was the shield that this warrior was holding. And it is a heart-shaped shield.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Yeah, it
and
definitely
it has an interesting heart-shaped shield. You can see that the individual has a beard. He has a headdress which looks more Middle Eastern, Babylonian, or Persian.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some other things that are very interesting about him as the armor he's wearing. Well, I was able to identify because I knew a lot about ancient infantry, which now with the computer age you can look it up and you can see pictures, but like 30 years ago, America, we do translate things. We date things AD and BC if it comes from America.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, it's just, but obviously the individual did not watch the whole video because I go on explaining. I do the whole thing, it's read as the calends of November since the founding of Rome, which was a dating system they used, and then it was translated to 23 BC. Mm-hmm. But obviously they didn't watch the whole video to see what kind of dating process was used on the artifact.
Well, sadly, most of them don't, Paul. So don't feel like they were picking on you. A lot of people don't have time to get through an hour or longer on a video, and they want to skim through and get the highlights, of which I'm guilty of doing the same thing. So,
right.
But it really is a video worth taking the time to watch and absorb. You guys did that when 1998, 95?
Oh, that one, no. No, that was down in 95, 96.
Oh, wow. And I mean, it's just as important and educational, if we're going to use that term. To me, it's educational. Yeah. It's just as much today as it was when you guys made it. And actually, I think even more so because, more things have been brought out into the open all those years. It's been a long time since you and Harry started on all this. So I'm just glad we're reviving it again, helping to be a part of that, because I think now it's more important than ever.
And I'd like to start with the artifacts. We have a couple on our site, and there's some pictures I'd like to compare it with. And what it does for me is that these artifacts are so diverse in so many things, not only the language, the details of some of these characters and portraits are so numerous that anybody prior to the computer age, it was really a very small, tiny number of people in this world that would have known the details that these artifacts describe. A lot easier now. You can go on the Internet. There's a lot of historical experts. There's a lot of modding going on, which I do also on some of the more modern video games. I've helped mod modes for Rome Total War, which was a very popular computer PC game.
Welcome to the White Owl Reports. I'm Michael Edward. Today, a little bit of a delayed start for those of you listening live. We had to get some links and such done, and it's just one of those weekends. It makes it more fun. But because of that, we're going to extend the broadcast. Normally, we're 10 a.m. till 11 Eastern Time. We're going to run till 11:30 Eastern Time today, so you'll get more than an hour of listening to some unbelievable historical facts from Paul Schaffranke, who's my guest again, and this is part 12 already of the Illinois Caves series. Just amazing, absolutely amazing stuff. And just speaking with Paul right before I came on live here, I guess we're all going to get blown away today. I want to remind everyone that what we're speaking of on the radio, when it comes to pictures, some of them are referenced at illinoiscaves.com. But some of them today are not even on that site yet. These are new pictures of artifacts that came out of the Illinois tomb of Alexander the Great. It's not lost in my book, but I'm sure everybody can debate that with me. But good luck trying to debate that with Paul Schaffranke, my guest today. So here we go, Paul. You're on, and we got a little late start, but let's hit it. Let's really open some eyes.
Okay.
I gave you 15 minutes extra. I mean, come on.
I know. And I was just reading a comment of my the Etruscan Volume 1 video that Harry and I made.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody made a comment. This is the Numerius tablet that I deciphered at the very end of the video that comes out of the Illinois tomb.
Mm-hmm.
An interesting comment was made. How did the guy know it was 23 BC?
So how did you know?
Well, because it was a prophet, and he knew that Christ was going to be born 23 years later. And don't you know, very few people actually knew what these characters looked like unless you studied ancient history or were into archaeology. You would only be privy to that information. So like I'm saying, with all these Illinois artifacts, there is so much information and so many details that somebody prior to 1982, if there was such thing as somebody faking these artifacts, not only would this individual have to know Egyptian hieroglyphs in ancient languages or group of individuals, they would have also had to know exactly what somebody wore 2,000 years ago as a uniform and what kind of hybrids were about. I mean, every little intricate detail, which is absolutely impossible. So this is another thing. This is one that also shows the authenticity. Now, you look at this warrior with this heart-shaped shield, and what it is, it's known as a Persian Takabara soldier. These were an Iranian soldiers from Iran. They served in the Persian Achaemenid dynasty, and they also served under Alexander the Great and with his successors. Now, I'm going to show you another picture here that I sent, which is when we modded the Roma Surrectum, one of the Rome Total War mods. This is what the infantry unit in our mod looks like. And if you would go to the picture, okay, Takabara 2. You have that picture?
Yeah, I have it in front of me. Again, this will be on the video when it comes out. So Takabara 2.
Yes,
oh,
and
wow.
It shows Parthia. And here's a whole line, a whole corps of these Takabara soldiers ready to throw their javelins. And you see the heart-shaped shield.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is how we read it, as that they had a heart-shaped shield like that, which is different from the regular square shields and rectangular shields that other type of soldiers had. But one thing I found very interesting, these soldiers that we modded here come from the description of the ancient Persians. They wear the cloth tiara, and they have this nice Persian design on them also.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we go back to our artifact, there is something slightly different. And probably the author or whoever designed the stone is showing what the Takabara soldier at that time really looked like. And as you look at the shield, it has that heart-shaped design, but actually at the top of the shield, it goes straight across. You notice that?
Yes.
And where we modded it, we had it cut like the heart shape. We actually had it cut like that. Well, it's very possible that we misread the ancient history and the interpretation and actually cut the thing perfectly like a heart shape, but it may not have been like that. The top may have been flat like on that stone. So this could be a mistake as we interpreted wrong, and this Illinois artifact is actually correcting us.
Wow.
And now another thing that we look at here is we look at his uniform on the artifact.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's Persian, however, he's wearing he has a heart-shaped shield that the Takabara had. However, he looks like he has better armor, better leather armor. He has something on his shoulders. He has the belt. And then as going down to the waist, he has kind of this pleated leather armor that the Greco-Romans had later on, which tells me that this mercenary soldier here served in the Hellenistic armies later on, possibly with the Seleucids or even later on, you know, as an ally of Rome. But because of the Greek and Roman influence, they were able to wear better armor. And he's also wearing a dagger, which is a last resort usually. This comes mainly from the Greeks as a last resort when they got throwing their spears and their javelins. If they had to go into hand-to-hand combat as a last resort, they'd have to use a small dagger. And this was classic amongst the Macedonian phalangists. They really didn't have swords. They used their long pikes to fight. But then when they were at a disadvantage in hand-to-hand combat against better infantry, all they had was a small dagger. So when the Roman legionnaires got close to them and were able to get through their pikes, the phalangists had absolutely no chance against the Roman gladiators. But this is one thing this artifact here shows us. It shows the soldier. He's better armored, but he has that heart-shaped shield, which shows that he's a Persian Takabara. So this basically shows a Persian soldier from the Greco-Roman times later on. And there's also another picture from a book showing what a